Hey guys, what is going on? This is DaaroDS. Welcome to Phenomeno. Mitsurugi Yoshi wa Kawagao Ranai. The visual novel. This is based off a light novel series based on the same name. Same people who created Steins Gate, the Steins Gate visual novel, and everything in between. This is just a short addition to the visual novel, but I wanted to play it because it has some sort of horror sense to it. And it sounded pretty amazing. And so today we're going to begin this legendary tale. And the prologue in Japanese, this is the main introductory menu. Everything else, hopefully, is translated into English. So, let us begin, hopefully. Let us begin Phenomeno. And so, the story begins. There are things that shouldn't be seen. Often said my late grandmother, that was quite true. I was drawn to the occult from childhood, and upon entering university, I learned the truth of those words by stepping many times into the edges of the netherworld. Ghosts, being which no one can decisively determine whether they exist or not. The story that begins here revolves around stories brought forth by them. And this story, it can also be said that it is the story of it and I. As its eyes glimmer in front of strangeness, as it breathes out words with a bedazzled expression. It warped the world that I always believed in. It made me anxious of whether the ground I stood on would shake. I would want to look over my shoulder just by listening, and I grew to fear whether someone were peeking from the dark shadow of the door. Maybe it was because the words it spoke included truths about the other side. It included truths that only applied to the scant, grotesque, waning dead ones. Now, after it had disappeared, do I finally know that? As grandmother said, it was the world that I should not have seen. It was a story that was not for the living person. However, I intend to speak of that. I intend to speak about all of that. Because if I don't, it wouldn't be able to rest in peace. Because it, having lived on the edge of darkness, having struggled through the threshold of darkness, would not be able to live in peace. Yes, I'll say it once more. From here on, is a story that shouldn't be known. Very intriguing. Welcome to Phenomeno. Case 1. Flow. You hear that, right? Dang, what is that? Sounds like something scraping a nail against something, like really woodeny. That sound. Hey, Mother, If the beings called ghosts existed in this world, would it ever be possible for someone to prove their existence such that no one anywhere could argue otherwise? I think it would be impossible, no matter how much humanity evolves. On the flip side, it also means that no one anywhere could prove irrefutably that they do not exist. From that standpoint, to discuss whether ghosts exist or not is a complete waste of time. That's why people who can emerge victorious from such a discussion must be people who can purely enjoy ghosts as a source of entertainment. Indeed, I fall under that group, and you could call me quite bluntly as an occult maniac. Mother may not know, but this is quite the niche existence in the world. To be of my age and go ghost, that, or go ghost this and that. I know that people laugh at people like me, but you know, there are plenty of things in the world that are implicable, I should say. Yes. Yes! I'm hitting the shift key, the wrong key. For example, the house I'm living in. This old, almost 30-year-old building is by the side of the Tamagawa waterworks, and partly because it's located in such an odd place, it has an incredibly low rent. When I came to Tokyo in the spring, I looked for a cheap apartment, and I found this place. It takes 10 minutes of biking to reach a convenience store. It's surrounded by darkness and covered by a thick copse. And because there are no street lights in the area, it's completely dark at night. However, I enjoy this old building. It was built like an old mountain cottage, as the first floor was a garage, and the second and third floors were a blowout. So it was more luxurious for one person living alone. The kitchen was as cramped as a kitchenette. It had a living room, a Japanese-style room, a bath, and even an altelier. From what I hear, an architect had designed it as a personal workspace. I liked it at first sight. Furthermore, for a place with a bath to be just 30,000 yen in Tokyo, Musashino was unthinkably rare, and even came with an oral story that could not be ignored. This is a house that grants wishes. So said the smiling real estate agent who introduced this place to me. The architect who built this became famous. The illustrator who moved in became busy and moved closer to the city. The young couple who was living here until last month gave birth to a baby, which led them to this becoming open. You are quite lucky. After hearing this, who wouldn't immediately seal the deal? I know I wouldn't. So I jumped at the opportunity, and there was probably a feeling of superiority too, given that my colleagues at the university pay over twice the rent and live in rabbits' cages. In any case, I was quite pleased in how lucky a man I was with my first time living alone. Yet within a month, I realized how big of a mistake that was. God, that awful sound. I can hear sounds somewhere when I'm sleeping at night. The squeaking of something persistently attempting to open some old door. I'd assumed that it was some kind of bad structuring somewhere, but I soon realized that it was odd that it always happened at 2 a.m. I tried to go to the living room from my bedroom at the edge of the second floor, and the sound would stop. thought maybe it was coming from above, so I went to the altar on the 3rd floor, but there was nothing that could be the source of the sound. I had planned to eventually organize it to be cooler, but at the moment there was just bare environment with just my desk and a bookshelf. I looked around, but the windows were all shut, so there was nothing to make a sound. After that, I went to the toilet and bath. However, I could not find anything that could be connected to the sound. So I thought, maybe I'm just hearing things, and went to sleep again. Or so I thought. But then the sound started again. Squeak. The sound of an old wood groaning. I could also hear the sound of something scraping. It wasn't like the mouse or a cat, but an eerie sound. Something trying to crawl out of somewhere dark after having been tormented for a long, long time. Eventually that sound stopped, seemingly echoing throughout the house. It felt like it was seeping through the atmosphere around my ear. As a result, I began keeping the lights on throughout the house and using earplugs when sleeping. However, the problem stopped being just around. It was just about 2 weeks ago I found a decisive thing. Oh my. What do we have here? I found a 7 carved into the wall of the landing of the stairs with something sharp. I immediately checked the doors and windows around the house, but there didn't seem to have been anyone entering. I was probably terrified. It was a pretty big engraving, but I forced myself to think I had ever noticed it before. A few days later, I found near the bathtub a number 6. Something sharp had carved it into the windowsill. Then a week ago, I found near the toilet 5. Even this easygoing person had to believe it. Something was in this house, and this was some countdown. I immediately jumped out of the house. I couldn't live in the house anymore. I hadn't made any close friends at the university, so I had lived in karaoke boxes and net cafes for several days. I couldn't even talk about this to anyone. I didn't know any monks or any mediums. Then I realized, right, here are the people in the Ikai Gabasuchi. No, the Ikai Gabuchi. My gosh. The Ikai Gabuchi, edge of the netherworld, would be perfect for discussing this with. The colleagues of mine who were also in the occult world may believe me. And so, incidentally, they aren't too suspicious after all. No, we were plenty suspicious. Huh? I recoiled at the sudden voice from above. When I looked up, I saw Karasu's white face, and she was waving her hand. Yo, Nagi. Karasu, since when are you here? I took the time on my cell phone. It was 10:30 p.m. There was still 30 minutes before the offline meeting was taking place at 11. Right around when you began explaining the house that grants wishes to your mother. That's basically the start. I complained as I grumpily placed my stationery back in my bag. Sorry, but you know, peeping is our trait. You know, said Karasu as she smiled cutely. This was a family restaurant near Itsukai. The Itsukai Ichikai Road. We're going to have an emergency offline meeting here with the members of the occult site I frequent. And of course, Karasu wasn't her real name. It was a handle that she used online, just as I, Yamada Nagito, yes, by the name Nagi. She went by Karasu. This was the third time we've met, but I still don't know her real name. However, she was a veteran on the Ikebasuchi site. Man, I gotta stop. I'm just trashing that name. Thus, a big senior to me, who only begun looking at the site this spring. Her appearance was, as usual, a purplish velvet dress that reached her ankles. Below that was a black camisole, or rather her chest was completely bare. Her breasts looked like they were about to jump out at any time, which made me looking at her awkward. However, this was her uniform of sorts. You're quite early. Did you close shop early today? I asked. Pretty much. Fortune tellers don't have much to do when there are no customers. She took off the stole she was wearing and sat down across from me. But you know, to put it frankly, she played with the skull-shaped accessory shining at her breasts as she smiled at me. Your house probably has nothing to do it. What? What was it? Right. Schema. Some word used in cognitive science. If you keep thinking you're scared, then you'll start seeing the faces in the ceiling. That sort of thing. Because you were hearing squeaking every day, you began to see numbers from the scratches they always were in your house. Seriously? Seriously. I mean, you came to Tokyo alone from the super realness in Shizuoka. And then this is your first time living alone, right? Then you're living in an old wooden house alone. You're living in an old one like that. So it's not so surprising. I used to live alone in a house that groaned and squeaked a lot, so I know how you feel. It's like the sound of saran wrapping, so it's pretty discomforting. So she said, as she raised her hand in order to order beer from the waitress. Well, wait then. If this was just me being a wuss, then what should I say about the occult veterans that were coming to the offline meeting? Would I get banned from the wonderful site for being just an airhead in one night? I don't think so. Don't worry about it. She laughed. We're a bunch of folk that love meeting and trading shady stories. But it shouldn't be that simple. We're about 10 people coming to this meeting. And then Karasu said, huh? And looked at me. You hadn't looked? At what? This meeting. I think over 30 people are showing up. What? I hurriedly accessed the Ikebasuchi offline meeting board through my cell phone, and then opening the House Grants Wishes investigation thread, and was taken aback. You're right. Why did the numbers suddenly rocket? Are there that many people interested in the house that grants wishes? Unfortunately, not at all. See, even the regulars, Sue and Zippo, are coming to the meeting, right? They wouldn't move for some mere horror tale. Some horror tale? She laughed at the expression I made as she plucked the phone from my hand and played with it, and then she turned the screen to me. This fourth poster, going by the name of Yoshi. I think this is why many people are showing up, because this one announced their participation. Who is Yoshi? No idea. Said Karasu with a grin as she pulled out a cigarette. She lit the cigarette with a worn, slender lighter. After blowing out a puff of smoke, it quietly whispered, "Those that meet Yoshi die 7 days later." What? There's more. Yoshi isn't a living person. Offline meetings that Yoshi attends end in terror. What else was there? What is that? Something like an urban legend has started being whispered around Ikaigabuchi. Yet there's no one who's actually met Yoshi. No one knows if Yoshi is some old man or even what gender they are. However, everyone who attends a meeting that Yoshi goes to remains silent. The entire thread disappears. The participants stop going to Ikaigabuchi, or they die. Her low whisper felt like ice-cold water splashing down the back of my neck. On the other side. I love how it just keeps going. Other side, Karasu happy received her glimmering cup of beer and exclaimed, "Gah, delicious," with a lackadaisical tone. But those are just rumors, right? I asked, and she laughed. That's right. So basically, even if the house that grants wishes is a miss, there's no hope of Yoshi. There's hope of Yoshi, so everyone's gathering for fun. So you don't have to fret about it any. She said, but I still felt mixed emotions. Until today. I was trembling with fear alone, unable to go home, and then I suggested today's offline meeting into the hopes of getting the opinions of the veterans of Ikaigabuchi. Having the story blown off immediately as a misunderstanding wasn't sufficient to quell my fears. However, if Yoshi had gotten interested, might the house that grants wishes be real? Who knows? I'm just interested in seeing how Yoshi-kun's appearance changes a horror story that doesn't interest me into something more eerie. Doesn't that interest? If it so bothers you, Ikaigabuchi has a page for investigating haunted areas, so you can request an investigation, although I still think you'll just end up being laughed at. She laughed, smirking, as she quickly finished her beer. Indeed, the Ikaigabuchi site did routinely check out haunted areas around the country regardless of fame. After investigation, haunted areas were graded on a scale of A to Z, with A being called the most dangerous of spots. This rating was very unique. In the famed areas such as Masakaido, Kubiduka, and the Iwanari were given a D rank by the Ikaigabuchi. In other words, they were rated the lowest of danger. Supposedly it was because it had become an area that was evenly split as humans and ghosts treated each other with respect. On the other hand, places given an A were often unknown to the common populace. Places such as crime scenes involving murders brought forth by thick emotions such as infatuation and jealousy. Isolated locales of death by seniors who have maintained fanatic delusions, and so on. And I say those places serve as lightning rods for souls that resented the current world, souls that had lost their personalities and simply become clumps of malicious intent, far from beyond saving. As I thought such things, Karasu had begun peering intently into my face. "Hey, Nagi-kun." "Yes?" "You have the mark of a meeting." "Yes." "And this is a girl." "Seriously?" My expressions loosened at her words. "Can you tell me a little more?" She began playing with a skull-shaped accessory near her breast as she continued. How should I put it? It was a very dense meeting, like two souls previously split are reuniting, but she said, seemingly looking through me at a different world. It's hard to say if meeting this girl will actually result in happiness for you. What's that? And furthermore, huh? Wait, isn't she dead? Hey. Isn't that like being possessed? You've got to be kidding me. But I also remembered that she would tell me ominous things every time we met. Previously, she told me that I had a bicycle luck. And then I got hit by a motorcycle. On the way back, she told me that I had gold fortune and was happy because I stepped on the gold-colored thumbtack at home. In other words, she was good at presenting unfortunate things in a way that you can't tell it's unfortunate, which is important skill for a fortune teller, I suppose. Yes, you know. You know, Karasu, if you're a fortune teller, shouldn't you also tell people how to avoid misfortune? I asked. But it's up to the person who whether to think of something as unfortunate. She stuck out her tongue in a cute way, and then shouted to the employee passing by, "Another beer, please!" As I sat there watching over her in a vexed manner, the door chimes sounded repeatedly, and the suspicious-looking people filled one after another, seeing how they were coming over after noticing Karasu. I deduced that they were the people attending the offline meeting. Yo, Karasu, as beautiful as always. Long time no see, you two, Maru. I'm so excited. You have such a karmic dispositions. As such conversation continued, my seat in the back of the family restaurant slowly becoming surrounded by activity. Every now and then, I would see a familiar face, but most I had never seen before. I had actively been participating in the offline meetings in Tokyo, and then I had continued seeing new faces en masse each time, made me realize how deep the world of the occult was. Just after 11, the group had just gathered at the back of the family restaurant with the odd interest had passed 30. Or rather, I'd picked up the family restaurant, figuring there'd be 10, so this is a pretty big transgression. The look from the waitress passing awkward smiles at me hurt. And there are more coming? I quietly asked Karasu, who was engaging in a friendly chat with another attendees, and she was a bit blushed as she responded, "It's way too late now. There's a bunch of people who would show up without saying anything, but there'll probably be a few more. That's problematic. This might scare away Yoshi too. She commented lightly, but this might be troublesome." So which one is Yoshi? As expected, not even an hour passed before the conversation blew past the house that grants wishes. The countless occult veterans crammed into the family restaurant. Each looked around them frantically looking for the accursed Yoshi. "All right, I propose introducing ourselves," said the middle-aged man going by the handle Professor, with his blushed face. Seeing the empty beer mugs scattered around the table revealed how drunk this person was, and in response, others chatted, "Yeah, let's do it," and one by one people stood up and gave a greeting. And as at least half the participants were getting quite drunk, and people began feeling less like occult maniacs and more like a complete drinking party. First, I'm Professor. My preferred area in the cult are stories from people of post-trauma ethnicity. Second, I'm Rabbit. I love folklore about Ryomen Sukana-sama. Third, I'm Harley. I get excited by stuff related to O parts, and the moment I'm researching Voynich and manuscripts. What are they going first, second, third for? Oh, why are Rabbit and Harley both jumping on the wagon? The occult maniacs were very playful, and so they began introducing themselves one by one, with an incredibly loud volume. I alone seemed to be talking in the brunt of the customers' glares from the rest of the restaurant. Seventh, I'm Karasu. Wow. That's actually pretty funny. Just a bookmark. I'm seventh. I'm Karasu. When she energetically stood up with a round of applause arose in the response, she began socializing with in every which way, so I gave up. Come to think of it, it would be said that every offline meeting for Ikaigabuchi turns out this way, so it's like a trait of the site. Here, Nagi-kun, it's your turn next. Urged by Karasu, I begrudgingly stood up. 8, I'm Nagi. I'm a university student. What type of occult do you like? I like anything wonderful, but right now things related to ghosts. When I lightly responded to a question that had been flung at me, people began shouting, "You're too tightly wound. You need to drink some more." And someone ordered beer for me. Man, I'm still 18. I'm underage, I can't drink. Don't worry, I'll drink it. Just act like you're drinking and I'll be appeased. I laughed. Karasu laughed, smacking my butt with her palm. Oh my god. I guess this is how it gets. Well, in any case, the 30 or so people introduced themselves like this. And the conclusion, there was no one here who went by the handle Yoshi. Huh, so they didn't show up. I showed up to see Yoshi. Is anyone faking their handle? Said the people one by one, but given most have never seen each other and the offline meetings weren't particularly rare, it was hard to figure anyone was lying. Well, since we're all gathered, can we discuss what the house that grants wishes is? I began, but Sue spoke over me. I think an old veteran of Ikaigabuchi who managed a liquor store and liked collecting things in the arms of the Tengu and the shell of Kappa, if I remembered correctly. Yoshi might be different handle of Krishna. I was sighing, but I reacted to that name. That would make sense. Someone responded. If we summarize the rumors involving Yoshi, if you deal with Yoshi, you'll have a terrifying end. Yoshi isn't a living person. Those that meet Yoshi die 7 days later. Something like that. But we've never heard any specifics to anyone dying, or maybe certain threads that were disappearing because Krishna was secretly joining in the horror area investigations. Is that what I think anyways? I see. Not even Karasu. Karashina hasn't been showing up lately, so that makes sense. Wait, please, I chimed in. Krishna is, as in the administrator of Ikaigabuchi? Krishna, everyone's met him? Met him, or rather, he's always showed up to meetings before. But he's not here today. You want to see him? Of course. The reason I became interested in the site Ikaigabuchi in the first place was being the person named Krishna was so fascinating. Of course, part of it was that I was interested in the occult from the start, but there was a different sort of attraction of ikaigabuchi. It was apparent, for instance, by looking at the odd words at the top of the page, things that bother people are also bother ghosts. From the start, ikaigabuchi was a site intended to soothe matters between people and ghosts. Most people can't see ghosts, that's why, regardless of our lack of ill intent, that we probably bother ghosts more than they do us, with a perspective that was both fresh and unique. As I read articles about the renowned horror areas on ikaigabuchi, my conviction deepened. Each article filled with the care towards ghosts, taking care to show respect towards both living and the dead. I always wondered why are people always afraid of ghosts? Oh my god, my bad. Perhaps some ghosts play tricks on people, while other ghosts say, "Come on, stop it," and are stepping in, intervening, and yet no one ever thinks of that possibility. Maybe that sort of order is maintained by ghosts, and is why the vast majority of the people live without ever being bothered by the supernatural. That paragraph struck a chord within me, in particular. Those words moved me. When I had just arrived in Tokyo, I hadn't met anyone I could call a friend. I realized more than ever that people were connected to other people through candor. It gave me, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. It gave me courage that I could make do in Tokyo, where it was said that people's relationships with other people are often weak and diluted, where people try to avoid needless interaction with other people as much as possible. That was actually why I began participating in that site. I became attracted to the person named Krishna, by their daily updates of the wonderful, his deep yet wide-ranging knowledge of the occult, his in-depth, cool writing style, the truth that could be felt from each and every word. These were the things I lacked, and were packed with things that my soul needed right then. Alright, this is going to do it for episode number 1 of Phenomeno. This gothic-esque horror visual novel. And this is DaaroDS signing out, and I will catch you guys next time. You guys have a nice day, and I'll catch you next time on Phenomeno. Peace.